My name's John. I've been working the late shift at the local Burger King for close to 2 years now. It's nothing fancy, but it covers rent, and the schedule works for me. I've always been more of a night person anyway. So spending my nights behind the drive-through window from 10 o'clock p.m. to 4 o'clock a.m. doesn't really bother me the way it would most people. This all started about a month ago. I was running the drive-through by myself, which isn't unusual after midnight since we're usually short-staffed. That's when a car pulled up to the speaker. The voice that came through was male. Nothing about it stood out. He ordered a large double Whopper with cheese meal and a Coke. Completely normal. The only strange part happened when it was time to pay. He cracked the window just enough to slide his card through. The windows were tinted, so I couldn't make out his face at all. He paid, I handed him the receipt, and then he drove off. He didn't pull up to the second window to get his food, just left. I stood there holding the bag for a few minutes, expecting him to come back around. He never did. Eventually, I set the order aside and ended up eating it later. People do odd things all the time, so I didn't dwell on it. Then, about a week later, it happened again. Same order, same situation. Someone paid at the first window and drove away before picking up the food. I remember thinking it was weird. Almost exactly the same thing had happened the week before. But at the time, I didn't really put it together. I just chalked it up as another coincidence. It wasn't until the third time it happened that it really clicked. It was the same person every time. By then, I knew something strange was going on, but I wasn't exactly upset about it. The food was paid for. The order was made, and I was the one who ended up eating it. So I kept enjoying the free Whopper meals and tried not to overthink why some random guy was basically buying me dinner every few days. This went on for a few more weeks. Like clockwork, he'd show up every 4 or 5 days, always late, usually sometime between 1 and 3 in the morning, and always order the exact same thing. I even started half expecting it in a weird way. I'd catch myself thinking, it's been a few days, wonder if my mystery customer is coming by tonight. Then one night, around 2 o'clock a.m., I was working the speaker when I heard that same voice again. I already knew what was coming. He placed the usual order, the one I knew I'd be eating later. But this time, he added something extra, something that made my stomach drop. He said, and this is burned into my memory, "Hope you've been enjoying those Whoppers, Mr. Hurley." Hurley is my last name. I don't wear a name tag with it. It's not displayed anywhere customers can see. There's absolutely no reason this guy should have known it. I just stood there, silent for a moment. My mind completely stalled. Then I leaned into the mic, asking who he was, what he wanted, and how he knew my name. I must have repeated, "Who is this?" 4 or 5 times. He never responded. This time, he didn't even bother pulling up to pay. I heard his engine rev through the speaker, and then he was gone. I was shaken for the rest of my shift. There was nothing I could really do, but I couldn't get rid of the feeling that something was seriously wrong. I didn't realize it yet, but things were about to spiral fast. When I finally got home, I noticed something waiting for me on my doorstep. A note, handwritten. It read, "I know what you did. You have 3 days." I just stood there staring at it, my hand trembling. My stomach turned like I'd been punched. The worst part was that I had no idea what it was talking about. I honestly couldn't think of a single thing I'd done that would explain it. I kept replaying my entire life in my head, coming up empty every time. This might sound ridiculous, but I don't have enemies. I don't live some secret double life. I'm a 24-year-old guy who works at Burger King and plays video games on his days off. My life is painfully ordinary. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch with every light in the apartment on, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. Eventually, I had no choice but to go on with my life. Turns out I didn't have to wait long. The very next night at work, he was back. This time, he dropped the act completely. He didn't order food. Instead, he told me to grab something to write with. Before I could even ask why, he rattled off an address, some place on the edge of town, in an area I didn't recognize at all. Then he told me I had 2 days to bring him $10,000. I almost laughed. For a second, I thought it had to be a joke. But the way he said it, flat, serious, I knew he meant it. As soon as he drove off, the fear came rushing back. There was no chance I could give him that kind of money. I didn't have it, not even close, so I chose to ignore it. I convinced myself it had to be some kind of scam or an over-the-top prank. I should have called the police right then and there, but for some reason, it never even crossed my mind. 3 nights later, I started to believe it was over. I hadn't delivered any money and nothing had happened. For a moment, I thought maybe that was the end of it. I was wrong. I was sitting on my couch, watching TV and trying to unwind after work, when the sound of breaking glass jolted me upright. I dropped to the floor on instinct, convinced someone was firing shots into my apartment. But when I finally worked up the courage to look around, I realized what had actually happened. Someone had thrown a rock straight through my window. By the time I looked outside, whoever did it was already gone. That was when I finally called the police. I told them everything, from the drive-through orders to the note to the address he gave me. They said they'd look into it and told me to stay alert. In reality, there wasn't much they could do. They said they'd patrol the area more often, but without any camera footage, which I don't have. There wasn't much else they could pursue. That was 3 days ago. I've called in sick to work every night since, but I don't even know if that helps. The guy clearly knows where I live. I can't afford to quit my job, and I definitely can't afford to move. So for now, I'm stuck waiting, trapped in this situation, hoping the police figure something out. I've thought about asking them to trace the credit card he used to pay for the Whopper meals. Other than that, I honestly don't know what else to do. I still don't understand why I was targeted in the first place. All I can do now is hope it doesn't get worse. I graduated from college about 8 months ago with a degree in communications, which, as you can probably guess, has been incredibly helpful in landing a solid job. That's sarcasm, obviously. I'm still living at home with my parents, and I haven't managed to find anything resembling a real career yet. So yeah, things are going great. For now, I drive for Uber and Uber Eats, sometimes switching between the two in the same night depending on what's busy. It's not exactly a long-term plan, but it pays a bit, and it helps me feel like I'm at least doing something while I try to figure my life out. I know it doesn't sound impressive, but it's where I'm at. I usually drive on weekend nights, Fridays and Saturdays, starting around 9 p.m. and going until 2 or 3 in the morning. That's when surge pricing hits and drunk college kids start needing rides home from the bars downtown. It's not officially a night shift, but it definitely feels like one. This happened a few weeks back. It was a Saturday night, probably around 1:30 a.m., and I was just about ready to call it quits. I had my finger hovering over the button to turn off the app when one last request popped up. The pickup was downtown, which wasn't an issue, but the drop-off was way out there, past the suburbs and then some. I almost declined it, but the payout was hard to ignore. The girl I picked up seemed completely normal, nothing strange at all. The drive took around 40 minutes. By the time I dropped her off, it was already after 2 o'clock, and suddenly I was alone, stuck in the middle of nowhere, with a long drive back to anything resembling civilization. I turned the car around and started heading back. Less than 10 minutes into the drive, I noticed a vehicle stopped in the middle of the road with its hazard lights flashing. As I got closer, I saw 2 people standing in front of it, waving their arms like they were trying to get my attention. My first reaction was to keep driving, but I'm the kind of person who has a hard time ignoring someone who might need help. So, against my better judgment, I slowed down and pulled over. I stopped about 20 feet away and cracked my window just enough to talk, close enough to hear them, but not enough for anyone to reach inside. They were a middle-aged couple, which actually made me feel a little safer. That feeling didn't last long. The woman did most of the talking. She seemed panicked, but there was also something oddly practiced about the way she spoke, like she'd said it all before. She warned me that the bridge up ahead had collapsed. According to her, it had happened earlier that day, and they'd nearly driven off it themselves. She gestured down the road into the darkness and told me that if I kept going, I'd end up straight in the river. Naturally, I asked what I was supposed to do instead. That's when the husband spoke up. He mentioned a turnoff somewhere between where we were and the bridge. He said it cut through the woods and would add some extra time to my drive, but it would eventually connect back to the main highway without crossing the bridge. I thanked them and pulled away. Almost immediately, something didn't sit right with me. I couldn't explain why, but I knew I wasn't going to follow their directions. I decided to trust my instincts and keep going the way I originally planned. About a mile later, I spotted the turnoff they described. It was a narrow dirt road that disappeared into the trees, barely wide enough for a single car. I passed it without slowing down. A few minutes after that, I reached the bridge. I slowed down as I approached the bridge, but there was nothing wrong with it. It wasn't collapsed, not even close. It didn't look damaged in the slightest. I drove over it without any trouble and was back on the main highway just a few minutes later. Nothing actually happened, but the whole thing stayed with me. I barely slept that night. I kept replaying the encounter in my head, wondering what would have happened if I'd listened to that couple, if I'd taken that dirt road alone in the middle of the night. A few days later, curiosity got the better of me, and I did something I probably shouldn't have. I drove back out there. This time it was the middle of the afternoon, full daylight, which made the decision feel a little less unhinged. I followed the same route I'd taken that night. The couple was gone, obviously. When I reached the turnoff, the narrow dirt path leading into the woods, I slowed down and pulled over. That's when I noticed something different. There was a sign nailed to a tree right at the entrance of the path. It was simple, just 2 words, dead end. That sign there before, I'm certain of it. Even in the dark, I would have noticed something like that. Someone had put it up sometime in the last few days. I sat there in my car for a moment, staring at the road. In the daylight, it didn't look quite as threatening. Just a thin dirt trail disappearing into thick trees. I thought about checking it out a bit more, but I didn't want to risk getting my car stuck, so I decided I'd go in on foot instead. I wasn't really sure what I expected to find, but with the sun still up, I didn't feel scared at all. I shut off the engine and stepped out of the car. Almost immediately, though, a bad feeling hit me. I stood at the edge of the path, trying to see farther down it, but there wasn't much visible beyond the trees. I can't explain it, but something about actually standing there, out in the open, made me hesitate. Every instinct I had was telling me not to go any farther. Then everything happened all at once. As I turned around and started walking back toward my car, I heard a scream echo out behind me. It was horrible, definitely a woman's scream. It came from deep within the woods, somewhere down that dirt path. I don't think I've ever moved that fast in my life. Before I even had time to think, I was already in my car and speeding away. I've never been that scared before. That was about 2 weeks ago, and I haven't gone back since. But the problem is, I can't stop thinking about it. Part of me knows I should leave it alone and never go back. Another part of me keeps wondering what really happened out there. I've even thought about asking a friend to come with me just so I wouldn't be alone. If I do, I'll record it and send the video. For now, though, all I can do is think about that scream and the people who tried to send me down that road. This happened a few winters ago, back when I was working overnight security at a warehouse complex. I was 26 at the time and had been doing the job for about 8 months. My shift was from 11 o'clock p.m. to 7 o'clock a.m., and I was always the only person there. I had a supervisor I could call if something went wrong, but most nights it was just me and the security cameras. The place was in an industrial area on the edge of a small city. There wasn't much going on at night. Most shifts were the same. Clock in, walk around the outside of the buildings, then sit in the security office watching the cameras. Every hour, I'd go out and do another patrol. The warehouse mostly held industrial tools and large supplies. Nothing that seemed especially valuable. The night everything went wrong started out like any other. It was cold and light snow was falling, but nothing serious. I did my first patrol, checked all the doors and gates, and went back to the office. Around 1:30 in the morning, one of the loading dock cameras sent a motion alert. That wasn't unusual. The system was very sensitive, and things like wind or animals could set it off. I pulled up the camera feed and watched for a bit, but everything looked normal, just the empty dock and snow blowing past the lights. But then the alerts kept happening. Every 10 or 15 minutes, the same camera went off. Each time I checked the screen. Each time I saw nothing. What started to bother me was that the movement always seemed to happen right at the edge of the camera view, like something was there, but just out of sight. By 2:30, I had gotten 6 or 7 alerts from that same camera. None of the others went off, just that one. At 3 a.m., I decided to go check it in person. The snow had mostly stopped, and the whole place was completely quiet. I walked around the loading dock with my flashlight, checking everything. I didn't see anything out of place. All the doors were shut and locked, and the only footprints in the snow were mine. I went back inside. About 20 minutes later, I heard a loud scraping sound. It sounded like something heavy being dragged across concrete. The noise came from inside the warehouse, somewhere far back in the building. I checked the interior cameras right away, but all 6 showed empty aisles. By this point, I was starting to feel uneasy. It felt like someone was messing with me or watching me. Still, I tried to stay calm and told myself it was probably just the wind or something shifting inside. About an hour later, I heard the sound again. This time it was much louder. I heard the dragging noise, then a hard bang, like something had hit one of the doors inside. I flipped through the camera feeds again. Cameras 1 through 5 showed nothing. When I got to camera 6, the screen was black. There was a few seconds of static, and then the image came back. But something was wrong. The camera angle had shifted slightly to the left, like someone had touched it or moved it. At that point, I didn't really have a choice. I grabbed my flashlight and radio and went into the warehouse. The inside of the building was huge, probably around 80,000 square feet. Tall shelves filled with equipment ran in long rows. During the day, the place was busy and well lit. At night, most of the lights were turned down to save power, leaving everything in a dull yellow glow. I was about halfway down the main aisle when I heard footsteps. They came from somewhere to my left, maybe 2 or 3 aisles over. It clearly sounded like a person walking. The moment I stopped, the footsteps stopped too. I stood there, barely breathing. The silence felt heavy. I remember how tense it was, just standing there and waiting, not knowing if I'd hear anything again. After what felt like a long time, I couldn't stand it anymore. I spoke up in a firm voice, saying I was security and telling whoever was there to come out and make this easy. There was no answer. The rest of that patrol was terrifying. I kept expecting to run into someone or have to deal with a confrontation. The longer I walked around without finding anyone, the worse the feeling got. In a strange way, finishing the patrol without seeing another person was even worse, because I was completely sure someone had been in there. I didn't hear or see anything else for the rest of the shift, but that didn't calm me down. If anything, I felt guilty. My job was supposed to be simple, and it felt like I was failing at it in real time. By the time 7 a.m. finally arrived, all I wanted was to leave. When my supervisor showed up, I told him everything that had happened. Maintenance came in and checked the building from top to bottom, but they didn't find anything either. Even after multiple inspections, no one could figure out how anyone might have gotten inside. I could tell by the way people reacted that they didn't really believe me. Still, that night is easily one of the creepiest experiences I've ever had. This memory still scares me, and other than the police and a few close family members, this is the first time I've really talked about it. A few years ago, I got my first job working at a 24-hour gym. I was taking a gap year between high school and college. so I mostly worked overnight shifts. The gym was open all day and night and could only be entered with a key card. Because of that, there were usually only 1 or 2 employees on duty. Members could come in, work out, and leave on their own. The place mostly ran itself. Everything, entries, exits, and machine use, was tracked on a computer. Most of the time, I just sat in the office watching the security cameras. Every now and then, I'd walk around, clean a little, or talk with some of the members. The gym was in a rough area of town, but most of the people who came in were friendly. It was a small place, and since not many people used it late at night, everyone kind of knew each other. One night in particular, I was working from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. Normally, that kind of shift was long and boring. But what happened that night still keeps me awake sometimes. It was around 2 in the morning. I had already walked through the building several times and finished my paperwork. I was tired, so I sat down to watch the cameras for a while. At first, everything looked normal. There weren't many people there, but a few regulars came and went. By that point, I'd been working there for a few months, so I recognized almost everyone, except for one man. I first noticed him on a treadmill in the far corner of the gym. That alone wasn't strange. New people showed up from time to time. What caught my attention was how fast he was running. I checked his treadmill on the system, which showed live activity. He was running at 9 miles per hour, which was already impressive. But what really surprised me was that he never stopped. 10 minutes passed, then 15. He didn't slow down at all. I looked closer at the camera. I can't fully explain why, but something about him made me uncomfortable. He was wearing old, worn-out clothes. His hair was long and messy. His face didn't change at all. No expression, no movement. He just stared straight ahead as he ran. That's when I noticed his feet. He wasn't wearing shoes. This man had been running at 9 miles per hour for at least 15 minutes barefoot while staring straight ahead. By then, he was also the only person left in the gym besides me. That's when I really started to feel uneasy. I tried to calm myself down and remembered we had a rule that required everyone to wear shoes. I decided to use that as a reason to talk to him. Even though the way he looked scared me, I forced myself to leave the office and walk out onto the gym floor. The treadmill he was using was right near the employee hallway. As soon as I turned the corner and saw it clearly, my heart dropped. The treadmill was covered in blood. His feet were completely torn up as he ran. Blood wasn't just dripping. It was spraying from his feet and ankles with every step. He didn't react at all. His face stayed blank, his eyes fixed straight ahead. His mouth was wide open as he ran. He looked completely out of it, like he was on something. I was terrified. Everything in my body told me this guy was dangerous. Still, I somehow worked up the courage to yell at him to stop. I don't remember my exact words. I just know I had to shout so he could hear me over the pounding of his feet on the treadmill. He didn't respond. He didn't even look at me. He just kept running, staring forward, mouth still open. I yelled again, asking what he was doing. That's when he finally spoke. In the coldest, roughest voice I've ever heard, he said, "Are you there?" What scared me even more was that he wasn't out of breath at all. He wasn't breathing hard. Nothing. I told him to stop several more times. Each time he only repeated the same words. "Are you there?" By then, the blood at the end of the treadmill belt was pooling on the floor. That's when I knew I had to call the police. I rushed back into the office and grabbed my phone. Before dialing, I looked up at the monitors one more time. He was staring straight into the camera. He was still running, still bleeding, mouth wide open. His eyes were locked directly on the lens, like he knew I was watching. I turned away from the screen, and then I heard screaming outside the office. It wasn't words, just screaming, loud, raw, and full of rage. On the camera, I could see him screaming while staring straight toward the office. Then, all of a sudden, he jumped off the treadmill. He didn't turn it off. He just took off running and disappeared from the camera view. I started flipping through every camera feed, trying to find him, but he was gone from all of them. All except one, the employee hallway. On that screen, I saw him standing there, about 6 feet from the office door, just standing still. I don't know how he got into that hallway without a key card, but I didn't stop to think about it. I jumped up and locked the office door. About 5 seconds later, the doorknob started shaking. That's when I finally called the police. As I spoke to the dispatcher, he started screaming again and slamming into the door. I backed into the corner of the office while trying to explain what was happening. The dispatcher told me officers were about 5 minutes away. Those 5 minutes felt endless. His screaming was horrible. It was deep and harsh, barely sounding human. He screamed nonstop for what felt like forever, probably around 3 minutes. I was sure that if he got through that door, I wouldn't survive. I felt completely helpless. Then, without warning, the screaming stopped. The door went quiet. I checked the cameras again. He was gone. I couldn't see him anywhere in the building. When the police finally arrived, I refused to leave the office until they searched the entire gym. After checking every room, they told me they couldn't find him. I answered their questions and went home. I quit the job the very next day and haven't stepped foot in that gym since. I still don't know what that man wanted or what was wrong with him. Sometimes, I think about what might have happened if I hadn't locked that door.